reading postman pact with my parents. That's the one that springs to mind. And it was probably the first real memory I have too of being completely immersed in a world that wasn't the one that I was living in. And Jess and Ted Glenn and Granny Dryden. I can remember them all now because it was so captivating at what was probably an incredibly young age. And then after that, the books I remember most were Roald Dahl. Loving Roald Dahl. I think everyone has the Roald Dahl stage, but even now I think that's exemplary fiction for children. So those are my earliest memories. We had a huge library, we were very fortunate, still do have a huge library, in Solihull, which is the nearest big town to where I lived, and it's been redone now, but I have really clear memories of the children's section having a well in the floor, all carpeted, carpet tiles probably, but I remember this being just a wonderful little hidey hole to take a book and read. We were very much still are library users, so yeah, definitely that. The most different thing about this book was the fact that one of the central characters was not only real, but so well known to everybody. I have written historical fiction before, but never have I had a character whose name is known to pretty much anyone you stop on the street. So that set this book apart from the previous ones in terms of the research I had to do. I've always been a huge researcher, I think it's vital, but I felt I had a character I had to absolutely know and present fairly and realistically and hopefully in keeping with the view of Vincent that everybody has, whilst bringing in new and truthful elements. So that was a departure and hard, but really rewarding. And I love that I know so much more about him now. For me, the moment when I thought, have I got a story here, was when I was in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam and I saw a specific painting on the wall of the olive trees during his time in this asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. And it occurred to me that if he'd been allowed outside the asylum grounds to paint, surely someone would have gone with him, somebody from the hospital would have been by his side. So that set me off researching to see if anyone had indeed accompanied him, because I just love the idea of somebody who was living a quiet life, a provincial life, having not travelled particularly far, being at the side of this man who was the complete opposite, you know, troubled and exotic and experienced in all sorts of things, good and bad. So in answer to your question, long-winded answer, I think the art must have come first, but it was only through Vincent's letters and his own written word that I really felt the story emerge, really. That's a really tricky one to answer because I have always been very frightened of reading fiction whilst I'm writing, and that began very early on. I don't think I had true confidence in my own writing style in the early days, so I was worried that if I read fiction alongside my writing process, there'd be a muddying of the waters, that I might soak up someone else's style. So I'm actually cautious these days of approaching fiction. I want that to change because I feel as a writer I am more developed and I probably could now read a book and not be influenced by it. But a lot of the fiction I do read, it tends to not be particularly current. I go back and I find novels that people were talking about 10 years ago that I haven't yet read and I absorb. So I feel I'm behind the game line, but in a way there's something beautiful about finding these books later on. I'm actually returning at the moment to reading Graham Swift's Waterland, which I read a long time ago, but I've just come back from East Anglia and I just remember thinking, I've got to dig that back out. So I'm soaking that one up at the moment.